units, IRENE. I say again, IRENE.
IRENE! Fucking IRENE!
Checking when ready.
When the one with the rifle gets killed, the one who is tolerating picks up the rifle and shoots!
Welcome to the 30th episode of the Pick Up Your Rifle and Shoot series, featuring my BHD 14.5 style build IRENE. BHD, now those three letters definitely need no introduction. It's the movie that sparked countless clones and style builds of rifles used in the Battle of Mogadishu, Somalia in 1993, and none more prevalent than the Delta Force carbines. Now these carbines do vary, but for the most part share common features such as a 14.5 barrel or shorter, a fixed carry handle upper, and a car stock. I prefer the 14.5 build like Hoot's carbine, a Colt model R0727, clean and simple, no optics, just irons. And as much as I like to do an actual clone, I already had many spare parts on hand to look the part, and I definitely been wanting to scratch that BHD itch for years. So with that, here's my IRENE, my 14.5 BHD style build. Now this build is very special to me, and it is on my very first lure I purchased back in 2013, a Stag Arms model Stag 15, and since then she's been in the back of the safe collecting dust, along with other strip lures that would continue to accumulate. And when the time came to finally build my first lure, I decided to go with another, and sadly the Stag 15 remained in the back, being passed over year after year. It's not until I started my channel that I reassessed my collection, and decided when the time came that my first lure must be on a special build worthy of that sentiment, and this build certainly surpassed that. Oh yeah, and finally scratching that BHD itch never felt so good. Now who's hungry? I'll go over more detail, but first, let's make sure she's all clear. First up is the Colt N1 Fiberlite cardstock that I got from Equipment Exchange on AR15.com, which is really quite nice and higher quality than replicas I've used in the past. Now, special thanks to C2 Installs for the N1 stock. I appreciate you. The makeshift sling is from a USGI carrying GP general purpose strap modified with paracord to attach on a stock and a front side base. I'm actually quite surprised how well the sling performed, especially slung up shooting prone, which also was quite comfortable. Next is a 6-position Mil-Spec buffer tube from KAK Industries, attached with a standard cast nut and end plate. Inside is a standard carbine spring paired with an H2 buffer. This combination worked well with the ammo that I used, and spent casings were exiting a consistent 3 to 4 PM pattern. Next is the lower receiver, a Stag Arms Stag 15 lower. This is a standard 7075 T6 aluminum forged A2 lower with a very nice hard anodized black coating. What's also cool about this lower, besides being my first, it also has the older Stag Arms roll marks when they were based in Connecticut, which gives a cool vintage vibe. Next is the complete A2 upper receiver from JAC Surplus that I got back in 2020. This is a nice aluminum Ceraforge upper receiver that does not have M4 feeder ramps. I also modified the A2 rear side jump to utilize RIBZ, Revised Improved Battle Sight 0, and set the 8.3 rear jump -2 for a 50-yard 0, which you'll see worked quite well. Up top, the standard charging handle is from DelTon, and I did all my shooting using the smaller aperture. The Delta ring assembly is from DelTon, which I also coated a black ceramic dressing to match the Colt skinny 6-hole handguards. The rubber bands are from bicycle tubes that will eventually be used to hold the wire and switch for a barrel mounted light. Next is the standard A2 front sight base already mounted on the barrel from DelTon. DelTon sells their barrels with an optional front sight base already mounted, standard or F mark, which is so convenient for home builders like myself. Up top, I use a standard A2 front sight also from DelTon, which I may swap out for something not as wide. Moving along, obviously the barrel is also from DelTon, which is their 14.5 M4 profile barrel, chrome line with a 1 in 9 twist, and to make that magic number of 16, I added an Adco KAC Spacer with a standard A2 flash hider and had my local gunsmith pin and weld. Now I must say, this setup definitely looks a lot better than using an extended A2 flash hider, which looks awkward in my opinion. And so far the pin and weld has held up, permanently attaching the A2 flash hider on the barrel. Damn, she looks great. Now let's go flip around to the other side. Here's the right side with the Colt N1 Fiberlite car stock. It does have the 3 casting molding dots on the side of the tube section and also has the end marking on the bottom right. The opposite side does have the 1 marking, even though you can't see it on camera. Moving along, here's the other side of the upper and lower receiver. On the upper receiver, near the rear sight, you can see the Sarah Forge's keyhole mark. Inside, the bolt carrier grip I'm using is from Aero Position. It's their standard M16 Mil-Spec manganese phosphate with a 158 Carpenter bolt. For the lower receiver, I used the standard lower parts kit from CMMG and replaced the pivot pins with ones from Stag arms for a more authentic look. And lastly, I used a Colt A2 pistol grip marked F1 underneath. Overall, I'm very happy how my 14.5 BHD style build IRENE turned out. I'm proud she's on my first lower I ever bought. The 14.5 barrel looks awesome compared to standard 16s, which look disproportionate to me now after this build. Yeah, I knew it. Size doesn't matter. It's how you use it. Well, at the range, I mean. Alright, let's get on with shooting. Off to the 50-yard range. For my AR-15s, I always zero up 50 yards with a center mass hold. I also prefer using the RIBZ method, revised, improved, Battlesight Zero for my A2, A4 carry handles. Although I couldn't find RIBZ data for 14.5 on an A2 fixed upper, I went ahead and just used the data for the 20-inch instead. And I set the 8.3 rear side drum to -2 for a 50-yard zero. After adjusting the size of my rounds at center, I then shot these 3 rounds to confirm my zero. Let's see how it went. As you can see, the 3 rounds hit close enough to the center with no gassing issues or malfunctions. Very cool. Now let's see how she does at 200 yards. With the sights untouched for my 50-yard zero, I proceeded to shoot 10 rounds using a 6 o'clock hold. Let's see how it went. The target I'm using is the NRA-C 200 yard target, which has a 13-inch black circle. I also put a Shoot and See 12-inch circle target from Big Dog Targets so it's easier to see the hits. As you can see, all the rounds grouped well enough together considering how windy it was. The elevation was about 2 inches high for my 6 o'clock hold, and windage was fine for the most part. So with that data, I could conclude that my IRENE can at least do 2.38 MOA at 200 yards with the ammo that I'm using. Igman 223 55 grain full metal jacket brass case. Shooting 10 rounds gives me an honest measurement of my capability with the ammo that I'm using. I'll measure 8 out of 10 rounds, 80%, allowing 2 for shoot errors and flyers. Now I know she can do a whole lot better than 2.38 MOA with more trigger time and better weather conditions, but for my first time at 200 yards, I'm very satisfied. Alright, now let's see if RIBZ works at 100 meters. So it's that time again, another 6-inch steel circle challenge at 100 meters. Still 10 rounds with my ARs to knock off 5 6-inch steel circle targets with no front support, except for the use of a sling. And instead of doing a hasty sling, since the sling is kind of permanently attached with tied off paracord, I just slipped my support arm through the adjustment buckle and adjusted the sling till it was taut, to simulate a loop sling. As for RIBC, I went ahead and adjusted the rear sight drum now from -3 for 100 yard setting, still following RIBZ for the 20-inch barrel with a fixed carry handle, and I aimed center mass. Alright, enough of the logistics, let's see how my first and only attempt went. Finally, 5 for 5 with the AR at 100 meters. I know you can't see it on camera, but I'm doing Kirk Gibson fist bumps in my head from finally getting a perfect string. And yes, that Kirk Gibson from the 1988 World Series. Yeah, and yes, I am that old. I superimposed all the hits so you can see how they look. With the exception of the first hit on the left, the group on the right measured to about 2 inches, which is 1.82 MOA at 100 meters. Now for the really interesting data. With the rear side drum at -3 for 100 yards, following the RBZ for a 20-inch barrel for a fixed carry handle, you can see my hits were 1.5 inches low for my center mass point of aim. And as for windage, the group hit 1.5 inches to the right. Now I'm going to assume this is because the sling is attached to the front sight base instead of the bottom sling swivel, and with the simulated loop sling, the sling wraps from the left side, pulling barrel to the right. Unfortunately, I did not group right 100 meters before or even after to verify. I just went ahead for the challenge right off the bat, and hit a home run on my first try. Well, such is life. So, there you have it, my Irene, my BHD 14.5 style build, worthy of my first lore and a tribute to the warriors of Operation Gothic Serpent. And even though she's not an exact clone, she definitely looks the part, and performed exceptionally well at the range. That perfect string at the steel challenge was really icing on the cake, and such an awesome rifle. Well again, I had a blast doing another episode, and I thank you for watching. Till next time!